All right. Let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. Sergeant at Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President?
All right. We have a very special guest. Normally I say we have a special guest. We have a very special guest today. Someone who has helped birth along the current Senate of Maryland. We have Pastor Joe Reedy, who is at Liberty Church in Westminster, Maryland, guest and father of the distinguished senator from the 5th District. Please rise for the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be with you, especially on such an absolutely gorgeous morning to walk in Annapolis. Let us join together in prayer. Almighty God, shepherd and sustainer of our souls, how great is your goodness and your creative splendor, so vividly displayed in the natural beauty we see around us each day throughout the state of Maryland. We gather here in anticipation of a new day with goals that stir us into action. Realizing the severe limits of human wisdom, we choose the smartest of all first steps, to pray first and then to act. Give your gracious guidance, O Lord, to each senator and to their families, to all the dedicated staff serving here in Annapolis, and to those who assist in the local offices of each of the 47 districts. Bless our governor and lieutenant governor and those serving in the executive and judicial branches of Maryland's government as well. For each senator especially, we ask for wisdom to discern between priorities and preferences, to weigh the consequences of legislation on all citizens, to listen and learn even from opponents on particular issues, for patience with others, and for resilience in all aspects of their vital work. O Lord, hear the quiet yearnings of each person here, as well as our audible prayers. Bring gratitude to our hearts for blessings we enjoy but often fail to acknowledge. Bring insight to our minds as we work through tough issues. Bring candor to our hearts to help us honestly see our own faults and biases. Bring courage to our hearts to oppose all forms of evil. And bring a sense of awe to our hearts in seeing the intrinsic value of every individual human being, as we learn in new ways each day what genuine love requires of us. And now, as the springtime of 2024 is soon upon us, we pray for fresh vitality in this chamber and in committees as senators seek solutions for Maryland's many public policy dilemmas. For those citizens in distress due to addictions, chronic pain, mental illnesses, and other health challenges, we pray for effective care in pathways of hope. For all those who serve patients, and for those in law enforcement, first responders, and others in harm's way, we pray for protection, provision, and peace. May Maryland's many volunteers also be abundantly blessed as their acts of kindness flow freely from congregations, charities, synagogues, and civic organizations in cities, towns, and rural areas across the state of Maryland. We know also that in this historic chamber there are many unspoken needs. Some of these involve the work of this day, while other needs arise from personal, family, medical, relational, or financial stresses. For all of these, we ask, O Lord, for your almighty shepherding care, with help and healing that is precise and personal. May all who hurt find refuge and rest in the assurance of your unfailing love, O God. Send forth your light and your truth to guide and inspire us. Gratefully we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. That was wonderful. Thank you very much. Our honor. Chair recognizes the senator from District 5, Minority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask first that we journalize the remarks of the distinguished pastor from District 5.
Without objection, of course.
And Liberty Church is my home church as well, and we just thankful that my dad could be here. He helped inspire my interest in government and politics at a very young age with watching Ronald Reagan on a black and white TV, which I think is probably like a lot of you were inspired to get involved in politics too, watching President Reagan. So that's wonderful. My dad, thanks to the vagaries of redistricting, my dad actually lives in District 42 now, but our church is in District 5. So
Senator, one moment, just if we could please, it's a little bit loud in here, if we could make sure we have attention for the senator.
thanks to the vagaries of redistricting, my dad, I want to be sure people heard that. My dad lives in District 42, resides in District 42, but the church is in District 5. So myself and also the senator for District 42 welcome him today, and thanks for having the time to come down. Thank you, Mr. President.
Most certainly, and thank you so much for joining us. And did learn this morning that during redistricting we had a line that went right in between and severed father and son from the district, which please know there was no intention there, right? Of course, in any way, the body, if only. Right, who does? Great question. All right, wonderful. We do have to do a quick quorum call again, just to start us off here. So if we could, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Senators, I am very pleased. We do have a guest today and a resolution from my own district in the 46th district, from Benjamin Franklin High School. And I am so thrilled to have the opportunity to introduce and welcome Rhonda Waller, who is a school counselor at Benjamin Franklin High School. She is the 2024 Maryland School Counselor of the Year. She has taught for the last 13 years at Benjamin Franklin, and she has served in Baltimore City for 24 years. Ben Franklin is in the Brooklyn Curtis Bay neighborhood and is a turnaround school that actually, when my wife and I were working for the system, my wife was one of the turnaround folks, and the goal was to bring in great people to help turn around Ben Franklin High School. And Ms. Waller was one of the people that was brought in to help lead that turnaround effort. She's done a phenomenal job, and so I'm so pleased that we can recognize her here today. If the clerk could read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Rhonda Waller, Benjamin Franklin High School, in recognition of being named the 2024 Maryland School Counselor of the Year. We commend your commitment to fostering the full potential of all students' academic and social-emotional development. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 8th day of March, 2024.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. To Ms. Rhonda Waller, thank you so much. The Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your great work, and congratulations. Wonderful. Thank you for joining us today. All right. Let's see. Guests. Do we have guests? Any introductions? Nothing? All right. Well, we have a busy day today. Maybe we get through it really quickly. What do we think? Just fly right through. It's a beautiful. I was walking in today and I thought, today would be the perfect day to do an outdoor class. Could we do an outdoor session? If only we could. That would be beautiful. But let's go ahead and jump in. So we consider the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We have a message of House bills headed over. Clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 70, Delegate Hill, Criminal Law Interference with a Public Safety Answering Point, Penalties, Judicial Proceedings.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. They'll be referred to their appropriate standing committees. We've got another calendar of House bills. Number 10, clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 5, Delegate Crosby, Criminal Law, Indecent Exposure Within the Presence of a Minor, Judicial Proceedings. Majority
Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. They'll be referred to their standing committees as well. We have a message from the executive. The clerk will read the message.
Dear President Ferguson, in accordance with Article 2, Section 13 of the Constitution of Maryland, I am pleased to submit the following appointment nominations for confirmation by the Maryland State Senate. These individuals bring exceptional knowledge and ability to the offices for which they have been nominated. I'm confident that they will provide the strength of experience and leadership to instill the confidence among all of our citizens and ensure we succeed in our commitment to leave no Marylander behind. I look forward to your favorable approval of the nominations. Thank you for your assistance and support. Sincerely, Wes Moore, Governor.
Excellent. All right, names having been read, we will refer them to the Committee on Executive Nominations. This is what we will call a supplemental appointment list. Appreciate them being submitted. We're going to have a piece of legislation later this year related to the process of appointments that we will certainly have the opportunity to debate on the floor this year. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's start with finance, and we may bounce around a little bit we've got a lot. So we'll start with report number 17. Small little bills, not much, move them along. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 541, Senator Guile, Maryland Online Data Privacy Act of 2024, favorable with 14 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, little small bill. Colleagues, currently Maryland lacks a comprehensive online data privacy law, presenting a significant problem. This void allows companies to operate with minimal oversight, freely collecting and selling personal and sensitive data from individuals without their knowledge or consent. Users often interact with websites daily, sharing personal information and browsing habits, yet the extent of data collection and sharing on these platforms remains largely opaque. We've unwittingly become both the consumer and the commodity. Overseas, European countries have implemented comprehensive data privacy laws, such as the GDPR, prioritizing transparency and user consent. The United States, however, has failed to act and has not passed nationwide data privacy. In the absence of federal legislation, individual states are stepping up to fill the void. Currently, 14 states have enacted data privacy laws, with others in the pipeline. These laws mandate disclosure of data breaches and empower individuals with greater control over their personal data, reflecting a collective effort to bolster consumer privacy and trust in digital interactions. SB 541 is a response to the urgent need for comprehensive data privacy protection here in Maryland. As a part of a growing trend, this bill aims to address the gaps in privacy regulations by establishing robust guidelines for the collection, use, and sharing of personal data by companies operating within the state. While balancing the need for a positive online user experience, this bill ensures that individuals are protected from unwarranted surveillance and exploitation while online. By enacting comprehensive data privacy laws here in Maryland, we as a body can fill the void left by the absence of federal regulations and provide much needed transparency and accountability in the handling of personal data. Specifically, Senate Bill 541 establishes consumer protections and rights, as well as disclosure obligations relating to online personal data controlled or processed by certain entities that conduct business in the state or provide services or products that are targeted to residents of the state. The consumer rights under this bill include a right to confirm whether their personal data is being processed, and if so, a right to access the data, correct inaccuracies, and require a controller to delete the data. A consumer also has the right to opt out of the processing of personal data for purposes of targeted advertising, the sale of personal data, and certain profiling activities. The bill prohibits certain activities by business entities that control online consumer personal data. Among other protections, a controller may not process personal data for a purpose that is neither reasonably necessary to nor compatible with the disclosed purposes for which the data is processed, unless the controller obtains the consumer's consent. There are special protections for sensitive data, such as consumer health data, and personal data of consumers who are children. The bill prohibits the sale of sensitive data for consumers of all ages and the processing of personal data for the purpose of targeted advertising if the controller knew or should have known that the consumer is under the age of 18. Amendments 1 through 4 make a change to the title of the bill and alter definitions in the bill and the entities and information exempted from the bill. Amendments 5 and 6 alters protections related to consumer health data and the use of a geofence and clarify consumer rights under the bill. Amendments 7 through 9, among other changes, strike a notice requirement on controllers and a prohibition on the collection of personal data for the sole purpose of content personalization or marketing without consumer consent. Amendments 10 through 12, among other changes, apply prospectively a requirement on a controller to conduct a data protection assessment and establish certain liability protections to controllers and processors from independent conduct of processors or third-party controllers. Amendments 13 and 14 establish a right to cure for a violation that occurs during the initial 18 months the bill is in effect and delay by 1 year the effective date of the bill. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 14 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. So there's a lot of work on the committee. Appreciate the work here to navigate this one, complicated stuff. On the 14 amendments, are there any discussions? Any objections? Without objection, the 14 amendments, committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Chair recognizes the senator from District 7 on the report.
Thank you. Trying to look at this. It's a couple amendments. A lot of stuff there.
Just a few.
Can we just special order it till Monday, if you don't mind?
No objection to that, Mr. President. Or, I'm sorry,
Do we have any amendments by any chance?
Possibly. I mean, it's a pretty big bill, a lot of amendments, so, you know, she said she
Do we have any
accepted the
amendments
special
available
order.
Currently? No.
Do I have any available? No.
It's all right. We'll navigate it. That's fine. All right. No, the question is to special order. Any objections to the senator's request?
Mr. President, we can lay the bill over.
Unfortunately, we can't at the moment. Is the issue, and so we will. The request is a special order.
Okay.
You know what we could do? Does the senator wish to reconsider the vote by which the amendments were adopted?
Yes, Mr. President.
All right. Senator moves to reconsider the vote. Are there any objections to the senator's motion? Without objection, the motion carries. We are now again on the 14 amendments, committee amendments. The senator from District 7 wishes.
Yeah, Mr. President, I have moved that we special order
Lay the bill over, Mr. President.
layover.
Okay, thanks. All right. The motion is in order. The bill and the amendments will be laid over under the rule. All right. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 571, Senator Kramer, Consumer Protection Online Products and Services, Data of Children at Maryland Kids Code, favorable with 2 amendments.
All right. Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. Colleagues, there is not one of you or any parent in the state of Maryland that would ever permit a pervert peeping in their child's window or a stalker following their child to the playground, to school, to the shopping mall. No parent would ever tolerate that. But the fact of the matter is, colleagues, big tech is the pervert at our children's window, peering in to the bedroom. Big tech is the stalker that is following our children everywhere they go, to the park, to the mall, while they're in the school. They're tracking on their cell phones, they're tracking on their iPads, they are peeping in through toys that are connected to the internet. They're recording our children's voices when the children are interacting with those toys that are connected to the internet. Senate Bill 571 seeks to address that issue. The bill requires businesses that provide an online product reasonably likely to be accessed by children to complete a data protection impact assessment of the online product. This is a systematic survey to assess compliance with the duty to act in the best interests of our children. The bill establishes numerous rules, procedures, and prohibitions related to those assessments. The impact assessment must meet certain requirements, such as identifying the purpose of the online product and how it uses children's data, making a determination as to whether the product is designed and offered in a manner consistent with the best interests of children reasonably likely to access the product through consideration of certain factors. The bill also establishes prohibitions that apply to businesses that provide such online products. For example, a business may not process the personal data of a child in a way that is inconsistent with the best interests of children reasonably likely to access the online product. They can't profile a child by default or process personal data of a child that is not reasonably necessary to provide an online product with which the child is actively and knowingly engaged. Colleagues, most importantly, this bill does not, and I repeat, does not tell these companies anything with regard to their content. It doesn't go there at all. Amendment 1 makes changes to the title and preamble in the bill. Amendment 2 alters definitions and exemptions and makes other clarifying changes. The amendment also establishes that the bill may not be construed to require a business to monitor or censor third-party content or discriminate against children on the basis of certain characteristics. Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the senator from Prince George's.
Thank you. Mr. President, will the floor leader yield for a question?
Will the floor leader yield? Senator may proceed.
Yes, sir.
Curious, how will all these provisions be enforced?
In perpetuity.
How, not how long?
Oh, through the Attorney General's office. I'm sorry. All of these products are going to be submitted to the Attorney General's office for review. There's opportunities to correct problems provided in the bill that, you know, if a company comes up and they don't meet the appropriate standards, then they're given time to make corrections.
Will the gentleman yield for another question?
Sure.
I got it, the Attorney General's office. Does that mean the companies have to, everyone doing this has to submit data ahead of time to the Attorney General's office for pre-approval?
Upon request, they will submit that data. Correct.
Upon request from the Attorney General's office?
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
All right. On the 2 amendments, chair recognizes the senator from Prince George's.
Yeah, Mr. President, thank you so much. Point of inquiry, how would I go about having my name put on as a co-sponsor?
Let's see. We can request through the amendments office. Let's see if we can potentially do it quickly. We could.
Could you do it quickly?
Hold on to this. Let's see. Okay, let's see if there are. Let's see if there are other questions.
They bring this to
If
our
we
children.
could. All right. Let's see if there are other questions, and we'll see how quickly we can get it done.
Yes,
If we need to move
I'd
it
like
for
to
a
be
bit.
amended onto this bill, please.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Okay. Let's see. Chair recognizes Senator from District 2.
Yeah, perhaps here I can help out. Can we lay this over under the rule?
That's what I was wondering. Thank you. All right. Senator moves to lay the bill over. Motion's in order. The bill and the amendments will be laid over under the rule. Thank you. All right, let's do this. I think we have everybody here. If we could ring the bells, Madam Secretary, let's get these executive knobs and third readers if we can while we have everybody. I know there are some folks that have to leave a little bit early today, so. If we could do a quorum call.
Mr. President,
All right, has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. Okay. All right. We have special order calendar number 36. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 607, Senator Folden, Public Safety, Police Accountability and Discipline, Summary Punishment. Bill is on third reading for final passage.
All right, Senate Bill 607 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 607, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Let's go to special order calendar number 35. 35. This is executive nominations. Clerk will read the report.
Executive Nominations Report number 4. Question is, will the Senate advise and consent to the nominations of the executive?
All right, this is the report from earlier this week. Senators, please take a look at the list. Are there any separations that are required for this list? Any separations? Chair recognizes the senator from District 12.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to separate out, but I'm trying to navigate the report number 4 here to figure out which ones.
Do we want to special order it until the end of maybe 2 calendars?
Sure. Thank you.
Is there any objections if we special order in 2 calendars? Any objections? All right, without objection, we'll special order it following 2 calendars. All right, let's go to third reading calendar number 34. 34. Clerk will read the calendar.
Senate third reading calendar number 4, consent number 1.
All right, these are finance bills on third reading for final passage. Senators, please take a look at the bills. It's a consent calendar of local alcohol bills. Are there any bills that senators wish to separate and vote independently? If not, any discussion? All right, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, bills on consent calendar number 1, third reading calendar 34, are declared passed. Let's go to third reading calendar number 35. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill number 1, Senator Augustine, Electricity and Gas Retail Supply Regulation and Consumer Protection.
All right, Senate Bill number 1 is on third reading for final passage. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd District on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could I ask the sponsor of the, or the floor leader, please, to stand for
For
question?
Yes.
I
Sir, may proceed.
received overnight an inquiry from a constituent. He said that he has, for some time now, he said decades, been purchasing energy which is wind-created, renewable energy from a special supplier, and he's concerned that if this bill gets passed, he will no longer be able to do that because he'll have to buy the energy from BG&E. Can you respond to his concern?
Yes. So within this bill, we create a market for green energy where your constituent will absolutely still be able to purchase the power from within there. Inside of that green market, we do not have the price caps. We still have some of the consumer protections that are there, but they will absolutely be able to do so at a price that they work through with those guardrails from the Public Service Commission.
Good. Thank you for your answer.
Yes, sir.
All right, bill remains on third reading. Any further discussion? Chair recognizes the minority leader on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the bill, obviously this bill has lots of debate. Senate Bill 1 has the ability to move forward with that, which is quite a designation. Unfortunately, I think that many of us recognize that parts of this bill are necessary, and parts of this bill we have worked on for a number of years especially addressing the deceptive trade practices. But interestingly enough, one of the comments that you just heard was, my constituent thinks that they're buying wind power. Will this bill allow them to continue to buy wind power? Well, honestly, unless your constituent is sitting in Western Maryland by windmills or on the border close to Pennsylvania, they're not buying wind power. They're being sold wind power, but as we know, and what we've seen it because it was in this bill, is that they are not buying that, most likely. So unless you are driving home every day and drive by one of those beautiful solar projects that we have many of them out on the Eastern Shore, big black glass and shiny metal frames, beautiful for the landscape. We have many of them out there on the Eastern Shore. If you haven't seen one, certainly come by to take a look. But unless you're driving by one of those, you are probably not buying solar energy. And unless you have a battery of some type in your garage and you think you're buying solar energy, when the sun isn't shining, you are not using solar energy. So this whole concept of what we have right now with green power is really a deceptive trade practice. And my colleague from the vice chair of EEE she had a bill yesterday that talked about the Federal Plain Writing Act. And the reason I asked those questions is because we should have used that in this bill right here. Because what we did is we had some language in here that was, I don't know if a sixth grader could have understood it, but certainly a little bit more educated individual that was interested in buying their own power could probably understand the language. And what did we do? We crossed all that off and we put in some language that very few, if anybody, could understand. So there's the deceptive trade practice right there. There's a deceptive practice that we've actually added into the bill. We took out something, we put it back in. The other things I think are very interesting about this bill are the carve-outs and what we decided to do. So again, green power is carved out. So in other words, if you want to buy green power, it's fine for you to go out and spend more money on green power. You're not tied into SOS or some 12-month trailing average for SOS that nobody really knows how to figure out anyways. You want to buy green power, spend as much money as you want. Don't care. But why is green power more money? Why haven't we been able to address that over time? Why is it always, if you want to buy green power, you have to spend more money? What else did we carve out? We carved out Department of General Services. Everybody remembers why we did that, right? We had a big bill last year that dealt with offshore wind. Remember the big qualifier in there that because nobody's going to buy offshore wind because it's going to be so expensive that we actually said the Department of General Services has to buy offshore wind power. Right? Remember that? We'd had that last year. Department of General Services has to buy probably the most expensive energy that will ever be created in Maryland. Department of General Services has to buy it, has to sell it back to all the different agencies, anybody in the state agencies that uses electricity. Department of General Services gets to sell it back to them at whatever price the developers of offshore wind want. Again, that will be paid by taxpayers. So as we're going through the next few years, if we ever get offshore wind, it's only been 13 years, I think, right now, probably another 10 years before we may ever see something. But if we ever get offshore wind, then yes, the possibility is that all Maryland agencies will have to buy the most expensive energy, and this bill makes sure of it by carving that out of retail choice. What else did we carve out in this bill? Community choice aggregation. A few years ago, we passed a pilot program for Montgomery County only to look at community choice aggregation. They were going to be able to find the type of energy mix that they wanted, that they thought was most important, and be able to use that themselves for all of their constituents within the border of Montgomery County. And guess why? We had to carve that out. You know why? Because it's going to be more expensive than SOS. So we had to leave that as a carve-out, so again, we could spend more money on energy from that program. So what we continue to see, Mr. President, is the policies being created here in the General Assembly are leading to one thing: higher energy costs. We've seen it through 3 different examples I just brought up. This is the 4th example. When this bill goes through and we eliminate customer choice, we eliminate the retail energy supply, all citizens of Maryland will almost be tied into buying standard offer service SOS. And what's going to happen? Well, we've seen what's happened in other states that have eliminated choice. Standard offer service has skyrocketed. There is no competition anymore. Sure, there's auctions. Sure, there's ways that are going to possibly keep it competitive, but nowhere near competitive like the ability to have retail choice. So, Mr. President, with that, again, I'm going to be voting against the bill. I think that we have seen enough policy in the state of Maryland that has shown that we have done nothing but create policies that are making energy prices go up higher. This will do the same thing. This will force businesses to leave Maryland. The big businesses are going to sit there and say, nope, we're not even willing to do it. There was, in fact, on Friday, I think the voting got done about 5:05. I understand one of the big energy suppliers in the state of Maryland had a board of directors meeting at 5:30 that same night and discussed, let's pull out of the Maryland market. Another company had already done it a couple days before, knowing that this is moving through. So what we're going to get left with is all these mom and pop LLCs that are, guess what? They're going to do the same thing. They're going to have these deceptive trade practices. They're going to still go after people. And when they get fined, they're going to say, sorry, LLC, we're out. Not going to be able to get anything out of it. But the good companies that were doing this, the good companies that were doing this the right way throughout these years, they're going to be gone from the state of Maryland because they're not going to be able to figure out why they have to abide to some 12-month trailing average and why they have to be less than SOS. So, again, I think that we are certainly starting to see a lot of things with respect to the budget, where we are with revenues coming in, different scenarios. It is not helping when we continue to pass policies that are driving businesses out of the state of Maryland. So with that, Mr. President, I'm going to be voting red.
Thank you, Senator. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, there are a few things that I definitely want to make sure that I respond to. Number one, I definitely do not want there to be greenwashing. And the term greenwashing, folks, is when folks pull a bait and switch and they make it appear as though they are selling you renewable energy and stuff like that that's in there. And because of that, trying to be thoughtful in this piece of legislation, we included inside of that green market that the PSC must confirm that what's underlying and what they're marketing, they got to make sure that there actually is that green power, that it is that wind power, that it is that solar power, to make sure that people are getting what they expect to get. So that's number one. Number two is there's just no question about it that there are certain carve-outs that we've put in here because we as a body have determined that we are in a climate crisis and that we need to make this transition to renewable energy. And so that is important to us. And so that is why we are doing our best within this legislation to support that goal. Another thing that I do want to share with you all, though, is that even though that is the case, there is a real need for us to do that. Because at this point, less than 10% of the energy that we currently use is in that renewable space. And so what that means, colleagues, is that 90%, in excess of 90%, is how these businesses have been making their money thus far, and in fact, taking advantage of Marylanders to the tune of $150 million year after year, year after year. Hundreds of thousands of our constituents who, with the passage of this legislation, will be able to keep some of their hard-earned money in their pockets. That's what this does in all of our districts. Hundreds of thousands of Marylanders who will be able to do that. This is balanced legislation. We still keep that competitive market that says that if you can save our constituents money, we want you here, and we welcome you here in Maryland. We want you to continue to stay. And we also are going to make sure that we have that green market that says that we have these goals that we want to encourage. And if you as a Marylander want to participate in that, we're going to support you in that. But we're going to have guardrails. We still don't want you to get taken advantage of, even in those instances. This is thoughtful legislation that I am very, very proud of to have worked on, and I'm going to ask for a green vote. Thank you.
All right. On the bill, Senate Bill third reading, final passage. Any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 33 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 1, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 45, Senator McCray, Baltimore City Alcoholic Beverages, BD 7 licenses, hours of sales.
Senate Bill 45 is on third reading from the 45th District. 45, Senate 45, all right. It's on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 45, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 66, Senator Rosapep, Prince George's County Alcoholic Beverages, issuance of license near a place of worship or school.
Senate Bill 66 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 66, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 308, Chair Education, Energy, and the Environment Committee, Housing and Community Development, Just Community Designation.
Senate Bill 308 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 36 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 308, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 480, the President Protecting Election Officials Act of 2024. This is an emergency bill.
Senate Bill 480 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 480, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 494, Senator Kagan, Election Law, Post-Election Procedures. This is an emergency bill.
Senate Bill 494 is on third reading for final passage. Senators, this is an emergency bill. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 494, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 495, Senator Kagan, Election Law, Petitions and Ballot Questions, Plain Language Requirement.
Senate Bill 495 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 40 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 495, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 527, Senator Kelly, Community Colleges, Contraception, Access Requirements.
Senate Bill 527 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 34 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 527, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Let's go to calendar 36. Clerk will read the first bill. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll do this, and then we'll take up exec noms.
Senate Bill 531, Caroline County Senators, Caroline County Alcoholic Beverages, Barbershop, and Beauty Salon License.
Senate Bill 531 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With there are 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 531, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 561, Frederick County Senators, Frederick County Alcoholic Beverages Manufacturers Limited Beer, Wine, and Liquor Permit.
Senate Bill 561 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 561, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 573, Senator Quarterman, General Provisions, State Flag Casket of an Eligible Decedent.
Senate Bill 573 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 573, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 629, Senator Guile, State Board of Cosmetologists Membership Alteration.
Senate Bill 629 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 629, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 649, Senator Kagan, 911 Trust Fund Purposes Training in Telecommunications Cardiopulmonary Resuscitation.
Senate Bill 649 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 649, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 705, Senator Hayes, Health Insurance Qualified Resident Enrollment Program Access to Care Act.
Senate Bill 705 is on third reading for final passage. Chair recognizes the minority whip on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. In light of the State of the Union last night, I thought this would be a good time to just discuss why you're going to be seeing me vote no on this bill, and I think others. We understand that the immigration system in the United States has got a lot of problems, and it is not necessarily the fault of any one particular group of people or party. But what we are seeing in our country today is a surge of illegal immigration. It's coming across our border, and it's outside the realm of anything we've ever seen before. Policies like this, while I think this is an improvement over what was proposed last year, which was going to give Medicaid to anyone here illegally, this is saying that they can buy insurance on the exchange. It's asking for a waiver from the federal government. We're going to go ask for a waiver so they can buy insurance on the exchange. I don't really fault people who have come here illegally necessarily. We know there's, of course, a lot of people in our community that are here. There's a variety of circumstances. But Maryland, for the last, I would say 15 to 20 years, certainly the last several years I've been here, we've done everything imaginable to have a flashing neon sign that says, hey, come here, come here. And our state's infrastructure is taxed. It's been taxed for a long time. I looked at a study we had in committee. There was some testimony that was submitted in committee, and I looked up the stats. As of several years ago, we had added, over the course, I believe it was 2010 to 2018, we had added 45,000 illegal immigrants just in that year span. And that was at a time when illegal immigration was not nearly as strong of a flow as it is today. I can't imagine what the numbers have been since then. So while this may, in a vacuum, seem like no big deal, they can just buy an exchange, once again, Maryland is moving forward with policies that make our state much more attractive for people to come here who should not be in the country. They're here illegally. And so my vote has to be no on this. We need a change in our policy at the federal level. We need to secure our border. And if we were able to have secure borders and much more confidence in a system that removes people that shouldn't be here, gives people a path that have a reason to be here that we want to bring in, I think a lot of us would be much more sympathetic at trying to find ways to help people who are making their way. But we just can't continue to roll out a welcome wagon and add more and more cost to our citizens. And so that's why you're going to see red votes on this side of on this side of the aisle. And I think this is just to send a message. We cannot continue to be the state that says there's really nothing we won't do for people who are here violating the law. So thank you, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Senator. Further discussion on the bill? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to explain their vote? Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of Budget and Tax has 2 minutes to explain his vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Explaining my vote, this is a vote about us. This is a vote about holding down health costs in Maryland. More people, more insurance, less cost. Fewer people going to the emergency room, the highest cost medical care there is. This is about reducing costs for all of us. All of us. Yes, it helps some people who get sick get better. Nothing wrong with that. And my colleague's argument about the problem at the border, I don't know whether it be noticed that a bipartisan majority, 70 U.S. senators, Democrats and Republicans, joined with President Biden to say, let's take action at the border. And it is blocked by the U.S. House Republican majority and their candidate for President of the United States. It's time for people to come together in Washington to deal with the immigration crisis and not use it as a political issue. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. To explain my vote, I had proposed an amendment that took care of the purpose of Access to Care Act. It talked about having other state residents from West Virginia and Pennsylvania, regardless of their immigration status. It was a good amendment. It was not accepted, and therefore I'm a no on Senate Bill 705. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from District 40.
Thank you, Mr. President. One of the great things about our country is a country full of immigrants. Some of us came here even unwantedly. This bill provides undocumented individuals an opportunity to purchase health insurance. And just to piggyback off what my colleague said, in order allowing them to be able to purchase health care lowest cost for all of us. And I'm proud to introduce this bill, proud that this body has come together. Yes, we have a lot of work to do at the federal level as it relates to immigration. That's not this bill. This gives hardworking, often taxpayers, an opportunity to purchase insurance. You know, if you look at MSNBC or CNN, you see a lot of, discourse, and you think that folks that are in elected office and or serving as elected officials are always going after each other, and you see a lot of visceral. I would like to say, definitely, from my point of view, especially to those in the minority caucus, although we disagree, I think we have shown through this debate. Now, outside of here, I've gotten some really scathing messages, even like personal threats to me, as well as threats to those in our other chamber. But as it relates to my colleagues here, the professionalism, the dignity that we showed in our debate, even when we disagree, is something to look forward to. And so I thank all of my colleagues for doing so, and I'm going to put a green vote for Senate Bill 705.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes the Senator from District 12.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to thank the sponsor for picking up the mantle on this bill this year, one that I'm familiar with from last year, but one that also hits home for a variety of reasons. As a child of immigrants, I think this bill is really important for people that otherwise wouldn't have care to be able to access care. And people don't come here to our state or to our nation just to buy health insurance. And I think ultimately what this does, it helps all of us have reduced cost of care, because these are individuals that will go to our emergency rooms regardless when they need care, because they don't have access to a primary care provider or to be able to go to their clinic visit, and when they end up in an emergency room, they still get care that they need. What that means is that all of us end up paying for their care through the premiums that we pay. And so being able to get more people insured under health insurance, regardless of their immigration status, is incredibly important, not only for our broader community, but also it saves us money in the long run as well. And so I'm really pleased to be able to vote green on this really important bill.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Senator from the 37th District.
I just want to explain my red vote, because I put that up there with a lot of respect, because there are a lot of people that want to be able to buy the health insurance off the exchange. You can't right now. However, with what we're doing with this law, changing this law, is there's no incentive, there's no drive to make anyone try to assimilate or want to become a citizen, and that in itself is a problem. In that it is just setting up a situation where there is no incentive. There's no incentive to go in that direction. It's a frustrating issue. It's very complicated, and put a red vote up, humbly. However, there are a lot of issues with health insurance, and there are a lot of other frustrated folks that may be able to get health insurance right now that are completely unsatisfied with the options that are available to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any further senators wish to explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 34 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 705, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 734, Harford County Senators, Harford County Alcoholic Beverages Performing Arts Nonprofit Organization License.
Senate Bill 734 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 734, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 767, Frederick County Senators, Frederick County Alcoholic Beverages Promoters Permit.
Senate Bill 767 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47, I think, votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 767, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Let's go. Senator from the 42nd District?
Yes, Mr. President, since we've reached the end of the calendar, would this be an appropriate time to change a vote?
It would, Senator.
Great. I'd like to change my vote on Senate Bill 308 from yea to nay, and the little red slip has been turned in thanks to the help of one of our pages.
Wonderful. Excellent. Are there any objections? 308, yea to nay? Without objection, so ordered. Let's go back to the special ordered executive nominations report. Question, clerk will read the report.
Executive Nominations Report Number 4. Question is, will the Senate advise and consent to the nominations of the executive?
All right, question is whether we will advise or consent, advise and consent. Can't do an or there. Recognize the chair of the committee.
I move that we, do I separate out the?
We can separate now.
Got you. So I move the report with the exceptions of number 9 through 12, as well as statewide number 29.
All right, 9 through 12 and statewide S29. And we'll batch those separately and take a separate vote. Is that correct?
Absolutely, correct.
Okay. Any further separations? If not, the question before the body is on report number 4, but not 9 through 12 and S29. Let's make sure we have it up on the board. All right. Any discussion on these nominees? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, the Senate advises and consents affirmatively to nominees other than 9 through 12 and S29. The clerk will read the next set of nominees.
Thank you, Mr. President.
One second, Senator. Let's get it up here so that we. No rush. We're all good. All right. Let's advise to the nominees of 9 through 12. Okay, great. I think we have it correctly on this one. Chair recognizes the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we accept the nominations 9 through 12 and statewide 29.
All right. Any discussion on these nominees? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 45 votes in the affirmative, the Senate advises and consents affirmatively to nominees 9 through 12 and S29. All right, let's get to third reading calendar number 27. Clerk will read the first bill. $37, I'm sorry. Whew, going back in time. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 933, Harford County Senators, Harford County Alcoholic Beverages Performing Arts Theater License.
All right, Senate Bill 933 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. Oh, great. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 933, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Madam Secretary, if we could ring the bells. Okay. Well, we won't speed it. We'll go. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 941, Senator Moutz, Wacomico County Alcoholic Beverages, Class B, beer, wine, and liquor license, purchases from licensed wholesalers, and self-distribution.
All right, Senate Bill 941 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 941, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 964, Senator Reedy, Carroll County Alcoholic Beverages License Alcohol Awareness Training.
Senate Bill 964 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 964, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1001, Senator Beidel, Alcoholic Beverages Class 4 Limited Winery License Requirements and Authorizations.
Senate Bill 1001 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their votes? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 1001, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1002, Frederick County Senators, Frederick County Alcoholic Beverages, Brewery, and Distillery Licenses.
Senate Bill 1002 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 1002, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1044, Senator Guile, Cosmetologist, Aesthetic Services Definition.
Senate Bill 1044 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 1044, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1079, Senator McCray, Baltimore City Alcoholic Beverages License Extension.
Senate Bill 1079 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 1079, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 1, Senator Kelly, affirming the Federal Equal Rights Amendment.
Senate Joint Resolution 1 is on third reading for final passage. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd District on the resolution.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Let me start these remarks by saying that I love the sponsor of this bill. And I also love the obvious passion and enthusiasm that she presented the bill. That said, at the beginning of her presentation of the bill, as the floor leader, she said that she's never supported resolutions until this point. So this is a change of heart for her. I've never supported resolutions, but I haven't changed my mind. I also opposed this resolution, and here's why. Most of these resolutions are a waste of our time. Any resolution that relates to something over which we have no control, it makes no sense for us to spend time on it. So resolutions about foreign policy, for example, a ceasefire in the Mideast, would be a waste of our time. Resolutions about debates over in Congress, they're a waste of our time. We don't have any control over that. And resolutions about cases likely to come to the Supreme Court, like this resolution, is similarly a waste of our time. So the whereas clauses in this case seem to have not included the most relevant information, which will be of special interest to the Supreme Court if and when it ever considers this issue. And that is that before the original ratification deadline, 5 of the states that had ratified this constitutional amendment rescinded their ratification. You won't find that in the whereas clauses. Normally, the best thing for a litigant to do is to acknowledge the deficiencies in his case and then overcome them by explaining why the deficiencies should not be relied on by the court. This whereas clauses do not mention the fact that before 1979, Kentucky, Tennessee, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Idaho all rescinded their resolutions. So there are 2 theories of constitutional ratification. One is the tar baby theory, and that theory is once you've ratified an amendment, you can't ever withdraw the ratification. You are stuck to the tar baby forever. That would, for example, allow 37 of the required 38 states to ratify an amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and then all 37 to withdraw their ratification, and 40 years later, a 38th state to ratify the amendment. The tar baby theory would say at that point, the amendment is now an official part of the U.S. Constitution. The second theory is the single moment in time theory, which is that at one single moment in time, there must be 38 states which have ratified the amendment. So this resolution takes the tar baby theory and says this is the theory that the Maryland General Assembly hopes the Supreme Court will adopt. The case is not currently before the Supreme Court. It will never come before the Supreme Court unless the federal archivist announces that the Equal Rights Amendment is officially a part of the U.S. Constitution. It's, number one, premature for us to take a position. Number two, it's a bad idea because the Supreme Court's going to have far more persuasive briefs submitted to us if this issue ever comes before the Supreme Court. They will never see this resolution. They will have better material to work with, and therefore, that's why I think this resolution is a waste of our time and we should vote against it.
All right, thank you, Senator. Let's hear from the sponsor of the resolution.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues. Just one quick moment of response. I would like to say that when I introduced this resolution, I didn't say I had never supported a resolution before. I said I had never introduced one, and in fact, this entire body unanimously supported the FBI resolution calling on the Department of General Services, unanimously, in 2023. In 2022, we unanimously supported the Solidarity for the People of Ukraine, and in 2021, we unanimously supported a resolution calling on the Department of Agriculture to roll back some burdensome regulations related to blue catfish. Unanimously, we voted for that. So I would just like to say that I am going to be voting green on this. I believe that it is worth our time. I believe that equality of the sexes being in the foundational documents of this country is certainly as important as whether the blue catfish regulations are burdensome.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, let's hear from the senator from the 38th District, followed by the senator from the 35th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm rising just to explain my no vote on SJ1. And I actually had to go back and do a little history because during the interim, I didn't hear from anybody on this issue. So when I heard it was coming up, I went back to try to look at the history. The Maryland General Assembly already passed a ratification resolution more than 50 years ago. And in 1972, Congress sent the ERA to the states. Now that was 52 years ago. On March 22nd, 1972, when they sent it to the states, it was with a 7-year deadline to reach the necessary 3/4 threshold for ratification. Then there was a 30-month extension of the original deadline. The ERA failed in June of 1982 because 35 of the necessary 38 states had ratified it, but 5 of them had already withdrawn their support. For these reasons, the ERA died when its extended deadline passed in June of 1982 with fewer than 38 states. So after that, it's no longer existed or was pending before the states. And I also want to associate my comments with the senator from District 42. States cannot ratify a constitutional amendment that does not exist. And I also wanted to share with my colleagues that I actually have received emails in opposition to SJ1 from women. So for these reasons, I will be voting against SJ1.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Senator from the 35th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. The 14th Amendment guarantees that no state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. I think the supporters of this resolution have their hearts in the right place, but their sights set in the wrong direction. I believe it is clear that the Constitution already explicitly provides for equal protection under the law for all Americans, regardless of their gender. The Maryland Senate, in my thinking, the Maryland Senate shouldn't be wading into matters of constitutional interpretation that we have no control over. Let's let the appropriate experts handle the complicated issue of if and when a proposed constitutional amendment can expire. And for that reason, I am going to be voting red. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, any further senators wish to discuss any discussion? Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to rise to explain my vote, but I just thought my colleagues on the other side of the aisle might like to know, and before I tell you, I want to thank our awesome people in the library. Elizabeth and Sandy both did great research this morning really quickly. In 1972, the ERA passed the Senate unanimously. Thank you, Mr. President. That means both parties. Thank you.
All right, on the on third reading, final passage, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? Chair recognizes the sponsor of the bill. Has 2 minutes to explain her vote.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to take one quick minute. I want to thank everybody for the green votes that are up there. I have my green vote up there for my mother's mother, who is Ensign Maureen Rumpke Brannigan. She was an officer in the United States Navy, and she was extraordinarily proud of her service. She was among the first group of women who could be officers in the U.S. Navy during the Second World War. After the war, in the state of Maryland, she could not serve on a jury. That we didn't change in Maryland until 1947, and that was only in half the counties. It took until 1968 until women could serve on juries across the country. It is for my mother's sister, Mary Ellen Brannigan Chapman, who in 1969 was fired when she was pregnant with my cousin Nathan. She found herself a lawyer by the name of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and they sued the state of Texas, and they lost. It was until 1978 when women could not be fired for being pregnant. And in 2014, we had job protection in Maryland for the first time. 2022, it took us until we had paid maternity and paternity leave. We're still implementing that program. It is for, of course, my mother, Ann Brannigan Kelly, who worked at a company called Martin Marietta in the early 1980s. I'm very fortunate. I was born in the late 70s and not the early 70s, because until 1971, Martin Marietta had a policy of not hiring any mothers with preschool age children. It took until 1971 until that was outlawed. And of course, it is for my daughter, my son, my future grandchildren, and all of yours. So thank you for those green votes.
Thank you, Senator. Any further senator wish to explain their votes? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 37 votes in the affirmative, Senate Joint Resolution 1, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, we've got another third reading calendar, 38. Clerk will read the calendar.
Senate third reading calendar number 38, consent number 2.
All right, this is third readers of bills out of finance, a consent calendar number 2. They're on third reading for final passage. Are there any bills that senators wish to separate out? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, the bills on consent calendar number 2 having received a constitutional majority are declared passed. Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st District.
Mr. President, I'd like to be recorded in the green.
In the green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right, let's go ahead and go back to the Committee on Finance. So that does it for third readers, I think, for the day. It does? All right, good. All right, so let's go to Finance Report number 18. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 18, Senator Augustine, Health Occupations Pharmacist, Administration of Vaccines, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 12 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, Senate Bill 18 is an emergency bill that authorizes a licensed pharmacist to administer certain vaccinations to an individual who is at least 7 years old. Additionally, a pharmacist may order and administer an influenza vaccine, a COVID-19 vaccine, or a vaccine used in response to a public health emergency to an individual who is at least 3 years old. A pharmacist must meet certain training requirements, continued education, record keeping, and notice. Finally, the bill clarifies circumstances under which a pharmacist may administer vaccinations to an adult. It also repeals language that temporarily authorized a pharmacist to administer certain vaccines to an individual ages 3 to 17. There's one amendment. Amendment 1 alters the age requirements for specified vaccinations as described. There is no fiscal impact. To move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually was going to ask a question of the floor leader, and while I'm on the committee, I actually was not in the voting session when we had the debate and came later because of bill hearings, so I wondered if I could just
Will
ask
the floor leader yield to a question?
Yield question.
Sure.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Mr. Floor Leader. Could you, the bill in current posture, does it go over what was current law before the emergency in COVID for pharmacists giving vaccines to minors?
So this is before COVID.
Before COVID,
What was
yeah.
existing statute before?
Right,
COVID?
what was existing statute?
Give me 1 sec.
Sure. I'm actually can't remember myself exactly, so I'm literally asking the question.
No problem. We're checking with counsel. It doesn't, as far as we can tell, it doesn't say anything for minors.
I think actually my colleague here has. I think current law was you could do 9 years old or older for flu. It sounds like. Does that sound right?
We may need to get back to you on that question.
Okay. Because now the current bill, what's the current bill? I think I'm going to ask for the procedural layover in a second, but I do want to find out just so because we have some folks looking at amendments. Is the current bill is saying any child 3 and older can get not all vaccines though, or what do we amend the bill to do?
3 to 17 can get influenza, COVID-19 vaccine, and any vaccine in response to a public health emergency.
So if we have a future COVID-like outbreak, but it's not COVID, and okay, but no other vaccines.
Only those 3, but the last one is a catch-all. It's any vaccine in a public health emergency.
Okay. But did we raise the age to 5 for anything? I thought the amendments raised the age to 5 for something.
It authorizes age 7 to administer all other vaccines.
Okay. So the bill as it's now posture was we've gone from where you couldn't get, we think, we're going to double check, you really couldn't give any vaccines to any minors other than perhaps flu at age 9 and above. Now current law, if we pass this, will be any vaccine can be given to 7-year-olds and older, and under 7 would be, down to age 3 would be COVID-19, flu, or any other public health emergency. Okay.
Correct.
I think there's some concerns about that, and so we may have a couple of possible amendments. I would ask, Mr. President, if we could, ask for this bill to lay over under the rule.
All right, senators move to lay the bill under the rule. So ordered. We'll take it up on Monday. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 371, Senator Lamb, Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Provider Agencies and Personal Care Aides, Reimbursement and Wage Reports, Home Care Workers Livable Wage Act of 2024, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Senator from District 12 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 371, as amended, requires each residential service agency by September 1st, 2025, and annually thereafter to submit a report to the Maryland Department of Labor documenting the agency's average wage rate and highest and lowest wage rates for personal care aides. The Maryland Department of Health is required within 180 days after the release of the final federal Ensuring Access to Medicaid Services rule to submit a specified report on an overview of the rule and plans or steps the department will take to operationalize the rule. There are 2 amendments. The first amendment alters the purpose paragraph and strikes an unused definition and also makes conforming changes. The amendment number 2 strikes a requirement that the Department of Health conduct a specified reimbursement analysis every 2 years and substitutes the report on the finalized federal rule as described. Move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 371 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 764, Senator Hayes, Arts Incubator Work Group established, favorable.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 764 established the Arts Incubator Work Group to study how arts and cultural institutions can support local artists. The Maryland State Arts Council must provide a staff for the work group. The work group must submit a preliminary report and final report for its recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly by October 1st, 2024 on October 1st, 2025, respectively, and the recommendations must include any necessary budget facilities or in-kind services that are needed or could be used to support local artists. There are no amendments. There's no fiscal impact. I move the, so I want to hold this till tomorrow because we're going to have other amendments. So do I move the amendments now?
We can move the report and then we'll just special order it.
Gotcha. That's what I'd like
All
to
right,
do.
the senator's moved for the adoption of the favorable committee report and has motioned to special order the bill into the appropriate time on Monday. Okay. Any objections from the floor? Without objection, the bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time Monday. We need to add Hartford County in there. They've got all those promotional arts things coming. All right, clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 781, Senator James, Economic Development Regional Additive Manufacturing Partnership of Maryland Alterations, favorable.
Recognizing Vice Chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. Senate Bill 781 renames the Regional Additive Manufacturing Partnership of Maryland to be the Regional Advanced Manufacturing Partnership of Maryland. The bill makes similar changes to the purposes, memberships, and duties of the RAMP Maryland to incorporate advanced manufacturing instead of additive manufacturing. There are no amendments, there's no fiscal impact, and I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 781 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 799, Senator McKay, Health Occupations Limited License to Practice Dentistry Services for Adults, favorable with 1 amendment.
All right, Senate Bill 799. Do we have a floor leader here? Recognize the chair of the committee.
Mr. President, Senator Hayes is the permission to use the name.
My colleague had me distracted. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 799 authorizes the State Board of Dental Examiners to waive specified educational requirements for an applicant for a limited license to practice adult. In addition to pediatric dentistry, the board may grant a waiver if, in addition to other requirements under current law, the dental director of federally qualified health clinic or Maryland Qualified Health Center for which an applicant has contractually agreed to provide at least 2 years of dental services requests the waiver from the board. The bill also established a pathway for practitioners of adult dentistry who receive a waiver under the bill to receive a general dentistry license. Amendment number 1 authorizes the applicant to complete a dental fellowship at the University of Maryland School or Dentistry or another dental school recognized by the board. Repeals the requirement that the Dean of University of Maryland School of Dentistry request a waiver described and makes confirmed changes. There's no fiscal impact. There was no opposition in the committee hearing. I move the amendment and adoption of favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any objections? Any discussion? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 799 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's stick with finance report number 19. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 244, Chair of Finance Committee, Public Health, Clean Indoor Act revisions. Favorable with 3 amendments.
Recognize the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 244 is a department bill that extends the ban on smoking in indoor areas open to the public and in the workplace under the Clean Indoor Air Act to include vaping. The bill also codifies signage requirements, updates definitions as they pertain to the act, and strikes out data waiver provisions. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment 2 establishes an additional criteria for allowing smoking indoors at a retail tobacco business by providing that an exemption for retail tobacco businesses is only valid if the business does not possess a license to sell alcoholic beverages for on-site consumption, which will be further addressed by regulations being developed by the Health Department. Amendment 3 confirms the workplace smoking ban language in the code to the Clean Indoor Air Act. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader please rise for
Will
a
the floor
question?
leader yield? Senator may proceed.
Thank you. I think it was the second amendment that was specific and unique to cigar lounges. Can you explain the intent of that amendment?
Thank you for the question. I happened to be here in 2007 when we passed the indoor smoking ban, and we made an exception for cigar lounges or cigar stores because they would have been exempt completely. But we made an exception so they could sell cigars and people could, sample the cigars while they were in the store. But what's happened since then is a few counties have given liquor licenses to these cigar stores, and the code specifically says that indoor smoking is not allowed. And other than that exception, an indoor area open to the public, a person may not smoke. An indoor place of employment, a person may not smoke. So we make this exception for cigars, and now we've added alcohol, which is not legal under the Indoor Air Act.
And so the specific legislative intent, 24-502, the intent of the General Assembly that the state protect the public and employees from involuntary exposure to environmental tobacco smoke in the indoor areas of the public indoor places of employment in certain designated areas. And the subtitle specifically does not apply to retail tobacco business that is a sole proprietorship, LLC, corporation, partnership, or any other enterprise which the primary activity is the retail sale of tobacco products. My question for the floor leader is, why is alcohol now being addressed in the Clean Indoor Air Act when the act recognized the uniqueness of premium cigars and cigar lounges, and these exist all around us. In fact, just this week, Annapolis's only minority-owned cigar lounge was able to successfully achieve, after working for 3 years, their liquor license. We have these that exist in Anne Arundel, Charles County, St. Mary's, and Calvert. These are businesses that have followed the rules. These are folks who have worked very hard. These are businesses that actually add to the amenities of every area. And so, I'd just like an answer to that question. Why is the Clean Indoor Air Act even involved in dealing with a liquor license on an entity that is excluded from the subtitle?
Sorry, Senator, could Senator repeat the end of the question? I think the mic was live.
If cigar lounges were excluded from the Clean Indoor Air Act, then why is the Clean Indoor Air Act being used to deal with liquor license for this entity that the Clean Indoor Air Act has nothing to do with?
They were not excluded, they were given an exception. Initially, they would have been excluded, but we gave an exception and allowed the smoking indoors only for cigar lounges. There's another part of 24501 that says, an indoor area of any establishment licensed or permitted under the Alcoholic Beverages and Cannabis Article for sale or possession of alcoholic beverages is exempted. So you can't smoke and drink in the same place, according to the existing Indoor Air Act.
Thank you for that. One last question. I've not known the state of Maryland to shut down businesses. I've just not known that, especially those that have followed the rules, did everything that they needed to do to be able to survive. I'm just wondering, because there was no hearing held on this amendment, was there any input considered from existing cigar lounges that currently have this before putting the amendment in place?
We did not talk directly to any owners of cigar lounges, but we, obviously this has been discussed. We're not shutting down any current lounges. There's nothing in here that says we're shutting down a cigar lounge. The health department is going to create regulation, but that's not what this bill does. The bill just confirms what the Clean Indoor Air Act originally said in 2007, and that's that you do not smoke indoors in any public place or where employees are present.
Thank you, Floor Leader. Mr. President, I'd like to lay this bill over with respect to the rules for purpose of amendment.
All right, Senators, motion is in order. The bill and the amendments will lay over under the rule. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 436, Senator Guile, Workplace Fraud and Prevailing Wage Violations, Penalties, and Referrals, favorable with 3 amendments.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 436, as amended, increases the civil penalties for a knowing violation and multiple violations of the law prohibiting employee misclassification. The bill also requires the Commissioner of Labor and Industry, if an employer is found to have knowingly failed to properly classify an employee or a contractor or subcontractor, knowingly violated the state prevailing wage law, to refer to the Comptroller and the Federal Department of Labor any complaint that alleges a violation of specified tax withholding and tax fraud laws in the Tax General Article. Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 strikes criminal penalties and increases civil penalties as discussed. Amendment 3 is clarifying and alters the entities to which alleged violations are referred. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 436 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 475, the President, Center for Firearm Violence Prevention Establishment, favorable.
Recognizing Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 475 is an administration bill that establishes the Center for Firearm Violence Prevention in the Maryland Department of Health. The purpose of the center is to reduce firearm violence, harm from firearm violence, and misuse of firearms in the state by partnering with federal, state, and local agencies and affected communities to implement a public health approach to firearm violence reduction. The duties of the center are detailed in the bill. The Secretary of Health must appoint the executive director of the center, and the center must submit to the Governor and General Assembly a preliminary state plan for a public health approach to reducing firearm violence by May 1st, 2025, and a state strategic plan for firearm violence reduction using public health strategies every 4 years. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the senator from District 1 on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I ask the floor leader a couple questions,
Will the
please?
floor leader yield? Appears so. Senator may proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. My understanding is that the Brady campaign, University of Maryland, University of Baltimore Law, Johns Hopkins University, and so many other organizations currently study the firearm violence prevention. I was wondering what type of expertise will this center provide that doesn't already exist in those entities I just mentioned?
Thank you for your question, Senator. I think what this will do is bring all of those various groups together that are working on this issue and try to create the best practices out of all of that research work.
Okay. Mr. President, wouldn't that be the General Assembly? A lot of these groups lobby the General Assembly on a regular basis to bring bills to this floor in the Senate, and I'm just surprised that that process is being circumvented through this bill.
Yes, you the question.
Would you concur?
No, I would not concur. Thank you. Of course not.
Well, I needed to give you a question, so I was trying to be proper. On page 2 and 3 of the bill, it explicitly details the expectations for the Center Firearm Violence Prevention. How will any of these expectations directly assist the communities most affected, or I should say afflicted, by firearm violence? And is crime issue, or is this a crime issue, or is this a health issue?
I believe that it can be a crime issue, but it's also a public health issue. It's a behavioral health issue. I think there are a lot of various issues that are creating the gun violence that we're seeing in our state.
The fiscal note, I'm a little confused. I think the fiscal note said 20 million a year, and I think the governor said something about 10 million a year, or is that opposite?
It's actually been reduced now to 6 million a year. Yes, 6 million.
Okay.
There's been a reduction.
Mr. President, I was wondering if I may special order this bill for the purpose of an amendment.
All right, Senator has moved to special order the bill. Any objections to special
No
order the bill?
objections,
Someone?
Mr. President.
All
Thank
right,
you for your grace.
without objection, the bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time on Monday. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 477, the President Time to Serve Act of 2024, favorable.
Recognize the senator from the 33rd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 477 is an administration bill that increases from 15 days to 30 days the amount of disaster service leave that an executive branch employee may use in any 12-month period. Likewise, the bill also increases from 15 days to 30 days the amount of paid leave that the Secretary of Budget and Management may provide by regulation for uniformed services training or active uniformed services duty in a reserve unit of the armed forces or in the organized militia. There are no amendments. There was no opposition during the committee hearing. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Just, does this apply to legislative staff too? Senator, do we know?
Based on what I'm reviewing, Mr. President, it looks like it's just a leave for an executive branch employee.
Okay, executive branch employee, okay. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Questions on the adoption of the favorable committee report? Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 477 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 525, Senator Kelly, Labor and Employment, Equal Pay for Equal Work, Wage Rage Transparency, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from the 33rd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 525 requires employers to publicly disclose the specified wage range, benefits, and other compensation for external and internal job postings, and to disclose the previous information to applicants in which the job posting was not made public. Wage ranges must be set by the employer in good faith and must be disclosed to an applicant or before compensation is discussed. Anti-retaliation provisions are also updated by including employee promotions or transfers. Consistent with other record-keeping requirements, employers must also keep records of compliance with the wage range requirements for at least 3 years. Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 is clarifying, specifies that the law provides to a position for work that will be performed at least partially in Maryland, requires the Commissioner of Labor and Industry to develop a sample wage range form, and strikes a private right of action. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 525 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. All right, finance is almost out of the woods. One more. Calendar 20. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 613, Senator Beidle, State Board of Long-Term Care Administrators Requirements for Assisted Living Managers, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 613 alters provisions of law that were recently enacted to regulate assisted living program managers. The big issue is that there hasn't been enough staffing to actually create what's required in the bill for the licensing. And so this bill is going to extend the time to June 30, 2026 for the regulations to be developed for the licensing of the managers. The amendment alters the new reporting requirement. There's no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 613 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 712, Senator Bailey, State-Owned Nursing Homes Deficiencies, Citations, and Fines Reporting Requirements, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognizing the senator from the 28th District is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill modifies last year's bill, which came from the same sponsor, to allow us in the Maryland General Assembly and the governor to know about problems in the only state-operated veterans nursing home in Maryland. This bill and last year's bill covered up a very disgusting thing that was happening that was really covered up by the last administration, the Larry Hogan administration. The veterans were being abused. Veterans were being not cared for, not proper medical care. They knew it and they didn't tell us about it. As a member of the Veterans Caucus, myself and other veteran members of the Veterans Caucus did tours at Charlotte Hall. We deliver care packages there on the very carefully choreographed tours, intentionally to not have us know what's going on. So these bills, thankfully, the last year's bill passed unanimously in this body, told the contractor, this nursing home is operated by a contractor, that they must report to us anytime they have a deficient report for the care of their veterans. Well, this bill took the responsibility away from the contractor to the state agency in charge of the veterans home, or Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs. So the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs now, under this bill, will have the responsibility of reporting to the governor and the Maryland General Assembly any deficiencies reported on the Charlotte Hall Veterans Home. So as such, we have 1 amendment which requires that any reports also to be sent to the appropriate local government body, which is St. Mary's County. This veterans home is right on the border of Charles County and St. Mary's County. And there was no opposition at the committee hearing. Therefore, Mr. President, I move the amendment and the adoption of a favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 712 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 809, Senator Mounts, Dorchester County Applicants Polygraph Examination, favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognizing the senator from the 37th District and bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 809, as amended, is a local bill that exempts an applicant for employment as a paramedic or an emergency medical technician as a 911 center dispatcher in Dorchester County from the prohibition against an employer requiring or demanding a condition of employment that the applicant take a polygraph examination. This bill is the support of the Dorchester County delegation. The amendment strikes reference to county correction officers because they are already exempted. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendment and adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 809 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 875, Senator Kelly, Miriam Kelty Agent and Senior Social Connection Hub and Spoke Pilot Program, favorable with one amendment.
Senator from the 19th District is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 875 continues the effort to create communities that allow state residents to stay in their community as they age. The bill establishes the Miriam Kelty Aging and Senior Social Connection Hub and Spoke pilot program in the Maryland Department of Aging. The goal of the program is to support villages that seek to take advantage of operational proficiencies and existing systems, knowledge, skills, and resources to expand services to more residents in the geographic region. The bill requires that the Montgomery County Village Consortium be selected to implement the pilot program for a 3-year period. There's a clarifying amendment that indicates that the funding shall go to the Village Consortium that's been selected. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. It received a unanimous vote in committee. Mr. President, I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 875 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to the report on education, energy, and the environment. This is report number 19. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 738, Senator King, Freedom to Read Act, favorable with 3 amendments.
Recognize the senator from the 43rd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, libraries are our oldest educational institutions. The first libraries date back to 2600 BC. And then the 15th century, with the advancement of the printing press and the production of books, it really bolstered the concept of circulation. And while initially intended just for elites, libraries have since democratized education by guaranteeing free access to information and knowledge. Libraries are more than just a place to check out books. They are a pillar of our communities. They allow anyone the resources and space to develop their learning. Libraries are also our partners in Maryland's education system. And just as we set standards and procedures and timelines and expectations and human resource guidelines and requirements for the state and local agencies and governing bodies and professional staffs responsible for the foundation that's needed to elevate our children and their ability to reach their academic goals, we codified pillars for our educational system through the blueprint for Maryland's future. Now it is time for us to set pillars for our public and school library systems. Senate Bill 738, the Freedom to Read Act, establishes those pillars, and it asks our educational partners in both state and local government to set policies and standards for our libraries to ensure that they continue to be the foundation for the educational excellence and access and key to our free and open society that we know they are. The Freedom to Read Act affirms reading as a foundational skill critical to future learning. It guarantees Maryland's value of opportunity for all. It will put policies in place that guarantee a thorough yet timely review of any objections to books that may arise. And they will ensure that these objections are dealt with in a timely fashion and are a fair and equitable process to handle parental or other concerns. It also codifies our trust in our librarians as experts with the education and experience to determine what books should be in circulation. What the bill does. This bill creates state standards for the operation of a library, and it includes all the different types of library systems. That's why the bill is so long. We have a lot of different library systems. It directs our libraries to develop and implement a policy of their own to review objections to library resources. They are required, however, to keep these books in circulation until the review is completed. That is our commitment or our value of due process prior to. A governing body, whether it's a county board or a school board, may not dismiss or demote or suspend or discipline librarian staff for performing any of their jobs as set under this bill or the regulations. It directs libraries and school libraries to adopt and follow a written policy of their own. It also directs the state to develop standards that are set by this bill that provides access to the materials, that make sure that materials are, and these are the core principles around access, that materials should not be excluded based on the origin, background, or views of the author. Additionally, a library should not exclude materials from catalog because it is partisan, ideological, or religious. This is all the bill does. It does not set any standards beyond this. What the bill does not do is tell any library or school district what books they should or should not have in circulation. The bill does not dictate that an individual reads or does not read materials they find objectionable. It does not commit Maryland to an external standard set by national interests. It does not usurp local control from schools and counties. In fact, it asks local boards and counties to develop and set their own policies. It does not usurp the control of the State Board of Education, the state superintendent, or the state library board. Colleagues, to reiterate, this bill is simply, but importantly, establishing standard policies and core principles for our libraries. As state legislators, we are responsible. We do this. Libraries are an important key to our educational system. This bill, as I said, is about establishing due process. We support the authority and the expertise of our local schools and libraries. But we do have a responsibility to ensure that these institutions that are so vital to the success of the blueprint for Maryland's future, that we are focused and funding and supporting the policies that we know will achieve those goals. And we do this by ensuring the rights and the First Amendment rights of students, teachers, parents, and librarians. There are 3 committee amendments. Amendment number 1 makes this an emergency bill. It also has a technical amendment that makes changes to the description of what the bill does. Amendment number 2, it creates standards for local school systems to operate their library programs. Amendment number 3 creates standards for the operation of a public public, non-school state-funded library. And these would include the state library resource centers, Maryland State Library, all of the various types of library systems we have. And it also establishes, again, a policy, not a goal, in the state that public, non-public, and school-funded libraries operate by the standards in this bill. Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill has changed a good bit since it was introduced, and I think as I've been reading through it and discussing with the floor leader, I think there's some changes I think that have been good. There's some concerns that I have and have raised, and we've been discussing the issue. What I'd like to ask for is a special order until Tuesday. I know we have a good bit that's stacking up Monday night, and we need a little time to possibly work out maybe friendly amendment. We'll see. But if we could special order it for Tuesday, but we won't. It'll be Tuesday.
All right. Okay, the senators move to special order the bill. Let's hear from the floor leader. No objections. No objections. Any objections from the floor? Without objection, the bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time on Tuesday. All right. We've got the report out of budget and tax. This is report number 5. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 6, Senator Guile, property tax credit for dwelling house of disabled veterans, alterations favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from the 29th district as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 6 alters the eligibility criteria for a local option property tax credit for the dwelling house of specified disabled veterans to include individuals who have been declared to have a non-permanent service-connected disability of 100%. There is no state financial impact. The committee amendments, there were 2. The first is technical and adds a sponsor, and the second allows a county that has enacted the current law credit to choose whether to expand it to a non-permanent disability, as I've already described. The vote was unanimous. I move adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? And yes, chair recognizes the senator from the 20th district.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the floor leader. Will the floor leader yield, please?
Senator may proceed.
Yeah, thank you, floor leader. So when you say credit for the dwelling house, what, in terms of, say, is that for the property taxes paid on that home?
Yes.
Okay. And when you say credit, is it for what percentage of the property tax? Or I'm not sure if there's a percentage associated with that.
So it is an enabling tax for the locals that they're able to adopt, and they can adopt the percentage that they see fit.
So each county have to decide what percent of, you said the local tax?
That's correct. Property tax is a local tax. And this enables the county to determine, this is not mandated, this enables the county to determine whether or not and the amount that they want to provide the tax credit to the disabled veteran.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that answer. So in Maryland, the state does the assessment, State Department of Assessment and Taxation, and they have offices in each county, I do believe. And so it would seem like they're the ones you would have to go to that tax office to do this. So I'm not sure where the county would come in to the entire process.
Okay, so just to familiarize everyone with how the property taxes work. Yes, it is done and assessed through the state, but the state does not receive the money. The county receives the money. And this is not a mandate that we say each county has to go ahead and assume this tax. What it does is it says that they can, in sense, give this credit if they so see fit.
Okay. So, okay, thank you for that explanation. It's cleared it up. So why would we want each county in each jurisdiction to actually decide? Why couldn't we just say, hey, give them this credit? Why would all our veterans and advocates for disabled veterans have to go to each jurisdiction and lobby or advocate for whatever term you want to use for this benefit? Why couldn't we just give it to them?
Because we are giving this to the county because they're the ones that receive the property tax. So they can base the decision based on their financial revenue.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Mr. President, could I lay this bill over to look at possible
A layover
amendments?
wouldn't be in order, but the senator could special order it to Monday.
Yeah.
If there's
Okay. Yeah, could I special order then?
any objection to special ordering it to Monday?
No, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Any objections from the floor? Without objection, the bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time
Thank you.
on Monday. All right. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 21, Senator A. Washington, Education Public School Stadium Grant Program and Study established, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the majority leader as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 21, as amended, requires the Interagency Commission on School Construction to conduct a comprehensive study analyzing the current condition of public high school athletic and physical education facilities in the state and report its findings and recommendations to the Governor and the General Assembly by December 1st, 2024. The bill also requires the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission and the Prince George's County Board of Education to meet no later than December 1st, 2024 to discuss potential partnerships to upgrade public high school athletic and physical education facilities in Prince George's County. There are 2 committee amendments. First is technical, and the second strikes the grant program that the bill initially established. And I move adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments, further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 21 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 25, Senator Klossmeyer, Property Tax Credit, Disabled or Fallen Law Enforcement Officer or Rescue Worker, alterations, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Prince George's as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 25 changes the local option property tax credit for disabled or fallen law enforcement officers or rescued workers. Currently, to be eligible, the law requires the death to have occurred in the line of duty. This bill alters this to include those who have died regardless of the cause of death. The bill also requires, under specified circumstances, the amount of the credit for a newly purchased dwelling to be in the same proportion as the property tax credit initially granted for the dwelling. The bill also removes the requirement that the dwelling must have been acquired within a certain number of years. There were 2 amendments. First amendment was technical. The second allows the counties to decide whether to expand their credits to include individuals regardless of the cause of death. We asked for acceptance of the 2 amendments, committee amendments, and the adoption of the committee favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 25 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 161, Senator A. Washington, Community Schools, alterations, favorable with 4 amendments.
Recognizing the majority leader as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 161 authorizes a local school board for a school system with fewer than 40 eligible schools under the Concentration of Poverty Grant Program to extend up to 15% of grant funds on behalf of eligible schools. It requires the State Director of Community Schools, in consultation with local school systems and members of the Community Schools leadership team, to create a common needs assessment tool that each community school coordinator may use to complete the community school needs assessment. It requires programs and services provided by the CPG eligible schools to prioritize areas of greatest needs according to the most recent needs assessment plan. It also the plans must be reevaluated every 3 years. The definition of community school is altered to include specificity in the purposes of using community resources. Finally, the definition of wraparound services is altered to include additional services. There are 4 committee amendments. The first makes technical changes. The second adds an annual report on how concentration of poverty funds are used by a school, how many students and families were served by wraparound services, and how many volunteers the school used. Finally, the report will provide the rates of and strategies to reduce chronic absenteeism and student discipline actions. The third amendment alters the amount of funds that a county board can spend on behalf of a school from 10% to 15%. And finally, the fourth amendment includes some technical amendments for consistency, and instead of requiring MSDE to approve certain needs assessments and implementation plans, to instead allow them to provide comments. I move adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 4 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 161 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 194, Senator Hayes, State Procurement, Maryland Correctional Enterprises waiver, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the senator from District 2 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 194 as amended will authorize the Pricing and Selection Committee for Preferred Providers to grant a waiver under specified conditions to a state or state-aided or controlled entity from the statutory requirement to purchase supplies or services first from the Maryland Correctional Enterprises. It also requires MCE to report annually on the length of time between each order and delivery of supplies and services. DGS must adopt regulations to implement the bill. There are 2 amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical, makes changes to the title. Amendment number 2 changes the requirement to grant a waiver to the authorization designated to the Pricing and Selection Committee for Preferred Providers as the entity for granting the waiver. Move the adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 194 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 286, Chair, Budget and Taxation Committee, Homeowners Property Tax Credit Application Filing Deadline Extension for Homeowner Protection Program Enrollees, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Senator from Montgomery as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 286, there's a homeowners protection program, and what this bill does is it allows individuals enrolled in that program just to have some extra time if they want to utilize a homeowner's property tax credit. There are 2 committee amendments. The first one is technical. The second one also modifies the homestead property tax credit for the same population as well. There's no opposition, so I'd move the 2 committee amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 286 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 320, Senator Jackson, State Police Retirement System and Law Enforcement Officers Pension System Deferred Retirement Option Program Technical Correction, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Chair of the Pension Subcommittee as floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 320, as amended, clarifies that only members of the State Police Retirement System were required to terminate their participation in the DROP program, Deferred Retirement Option Program, before reaching age 60 under Chapter 400 of 2003. The bill also makes conforming changes regarding the payment of incentive compensation when an individual serving as the chief investment officer retires directly from employment, consistent with other positions in the investment division. There were two amendments. The first technical, the second adds the clarifying provisions regarding the payment of incentives on retirement by an individual employed as CIO. Move adoption of the two committee reports, two amendments, and the adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 320 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 322, Senator Jackson, Maryland Teachers and State Employees Supplemental Retirement Plans, Automatic Enrollment, favorable.
It is Pension Day. Chair of the Pension Subcommittee. Floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 322 requires the Board of Trustees of the Maryland Teachers and State Employees Supplemental Retirement Plan to automatically enroll all eligible state employees hired on or after January 1st, 2025 in a supplemental retirement plan. Employees may opt out of automatic enrollment within 90 days of beginning employment with the state. There were no amendments. Move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 322 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 366, Senator Mounts, Teacher Pension Systems, Reemployment of Retirees, favorable with two amendments.
366. Pension. Yep. Sticking back with pensions. That's a big stack of files back there.
I was actually expecting something on the last one, but Mr. President, I got thrown off a little bit. Colleagues, Mr. President, Senate Bill 366, as amended, exempts retirees of the teachers' pension system who are reemployed under an arrangement with the Maryland Association of Board of Education from the mandatory offset to their retirement benefit. Retroactive to January 1st, 2021. The bill also repeals obsolete provisions regarding an offset exemption for retirees reemployed under non-state grant agreements. There were two amendments. The first was technical. The second repeals the obsolete offset exemption and adds a sunset provision for the bill provisions as introduced. Move adoption of the committee amendments as well as the committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 366 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 368, Senator Waldstreicher, State Retirement and Pension System, Military Service Credit Eligibility, favorable.
Sticking with the Pension Subcommittee, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 368 repeals the limitation in the definition of, quote, military service as it relates to service credit for service with Commissioned Corps of Public Health Service, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the Coast and Geodetic Survey. Any member with qualifying service may claim service credit for service in those branches that precedes or interrupts membership in the state retirement pension system as specified in current law. There were no amendments. Move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 368 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 376, Senator King, Higher Education Empowering Joint Steering Council Funding, favorable with one amendment.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 376 provides funding for the Empowering Joint Steering Council to use exclusively on the University of Maryland Institute for Health Computing, UMIHC. Committee amendments, there's one amendment that adds sponsors to the bill, and I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 376 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 394, Senator Hester, Catalytic Revitalization Project Tax Credits Alterations, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the senator from District 2 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 394, as amended, makes various alterations to the Catalytic Revitalization Project tax credit. including allowing all phase credits to be claimed at once. The Secretary of Housing and Community Development may award the initial tax credit certificates for more than one catalytic revitalization project within a 2-year period. The Secretary may not, 1, accept applications and award the initial tax credit certificates for projects more than once within a 2-year period, or 2, issue tax credit certificates totaling more than $15 million in aggregate within a 2-year period. The bill also authorizes the Secretary to revoke an initial tax credit certificate under specified circumstances and requires the Secretary to establish procedures for the approval of project phases. The bill applies to tax year 2024 and beyond. There are 2 committee amendments. The first adds sponsors and makes technical changes to the purpose of the paragraph. Amendment number 2 makes a technical change that prohibits the Secretary of Housing and Community Development from revoking a tax credit certificate issued previously unless the entity ceases rehabilitation of the project. Move adoption of the 2 committee in favor report. Thank you.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 394 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 419, Senator King, Therapeutic Child Care Grant Program Funding Alterations, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 419, as amended, extends funding for the Therapeutic Child Care Grant Program administered by the Maryland State Department of Education through fiscal 2028 instead of expiring after fiscal 2025. There are 2 committee amendments. First adds sponsors, and the second extends the funding through fiscal 2028 rather than in perpetuity. I move adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 419 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 489, Senator Jackson, State Retirement and Pension Systems, Personal Statement of Benefits, Authorized Format, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 489, as amended, authorizes the Board of Trustees of the State Retirement and Pension System to satisfy an existing requirement to provide annual statements of benefits to each member and retiree through an online portal with individual accounts for each member and retirees. There were 2 amendments. The first was technical. The second makes clarifying changes regarding the information required to be provided, and updates the scope of the yearly Board of Trustees educational training requirements. For those of us who came from the House over the recent years, this same piece of legislation was introduced over there where we could access our benefits online. Move adoption of the committee report and the committee amendments.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 489 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 490, Senator Jackson, State Retirement and Pension System, Consumer Price Index, definition, favorable.
Recognizing the chair of the pension subcommittee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 490 corrects an obsolete reference to the 1967 Consumer Price Index in state pension law. Clarifies that the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers using 1982 to 1984 as base years must be used to calculate cost of living adjustments for state retirement and pension system retirees. There were no amendments. Move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 490 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 491, Senator Jackson, State Retirement and Pension System, Transfer of Service, favorable with 2 amendments.
Sticking with the chair of the pension subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 491 as amended repeals provisions of state pension law that requires the benefits paid to an individual for service credit transferred to another state or local pension system not exceed the benefits that would have been payable by the previous system for that credit if the individual retires within 5 years of transferring the credit. The bill also corrects an incorrect reference to the member contribution rate by the law enforcement officers pension system. There were 2 amendments. The first makes technical changes to the title. The second repeals an erroneously omitted 5-year provision. Move adoption of the committee report and the amendments. Sorry.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 491 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. The desk is clear. Desk is clear. And breaking news, the Pentagon has reported no aliens. No aliens. No aliens. Breaking news. Today, this morning, as we've been here, no aliens. All right. Let's see. Do we have any committee announcements today? Chair of Finance?
Thank you, Mr. President. It's 1:30. We're going to have 30 minutes for lunch. So Senate Finance will meet at 2 for 7 bills, 46 witnesses. Thank you.
No rest for the weary. Thank you, Senator. Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. President. We started bill hearings this morning at 9 a.m. We will continue where we left off at 2 p.m. We have about 10 bills, not a huge number of witnesses, and then immediately after a short voting session. So 2 p.m. in the EEE hearing room.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. Chair of Budget and Tax.
Thank you,
Big
Mr.
day.
President. We will pass the budget starting at 2:15 today, and then we'll have a short voting session after that.
Excellent. Very good. Judicial proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet today at 2 p.m. to continue our voting session. If we get through with the list, we won't come in on Monday.
All right. All right. Excellent. Chair of the Rules Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Can the Rules Committee please meet in the red room immediately after floor? Thank you.
Rules after the floor. Thank you, Senator. Let's see. Executive nominations? No. Or do we? Introduction. Yes. Senator from the 9th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I'd like to welcome our doctor of the day, Dr. Mona Kaleem. She's an ophthalmologist from District 9A. She works for Johns Hopkins Wilmer Eye Institute and is president of the Maryland Society of Eye Physicians and Surgeons. Let's give her a warm round of applause.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for your work. All right. Let's see. I think we have a, yes, the co-chair of the Protocol Committee. We have our majority and minority leader, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's the conclusion of a week, and we'd like to thank our pages for another week of excellent service. The first page that we're going to celebrate today, colleagues, hails from Montgomery County, District 18, Sandy Springs Friends School, Abigail Bobrow. Our next page hails from Carroll County, District 5, South Carroll High School, Ryan Cave. Our next page hails from Anne Arundel County, District 31, Severna Park High School, Ella Floritan. Our next page hails from Frederick County, District 3, Governor Thomas Johnson High School, Anusha Khan. Our next page hails from Baltimore County, District 33B, Mount DeSales Academy, Margaret Slusser. Our next page hails from Baltimore City, District 46, Vivian T. Thomas Medical Arts Academy, Amalek Villegas Badeo. And our last page, who's not able to join us, still let's give this page a round of applause, hails from Prince George's County, District 23, Charles Herbert Flowers High School, Enoch Amateo.
Excellent. Wonderful, wonderful. They did a phenomenal job. Do we get a picture? Are we ready? Or do we need another one? Okay. We are so thankful for each and every one of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your great 2 weeks, and we wish you the best. You're our best and brightest, and so keep up the great work. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the chamber in a different capacity maybe sometime. Thank you all very much. Excellent. Very good. All right. Let's hear from the senator from 44th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Baltimore County will be meeting for a delegation meeting on Monday at 3:30 in our usual room, the Verda Welcome Room.
Wonderful. And the senator from District 7?
Thank you, Mr. President. Point of personal privilege.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. You mentioned the Pentagon releasing news. Unfortunately, they also released some sad news yesterday. The A-10 aircraft is being retired officially, and with that, there is no continuing mission, a flying mission for the Air National Guard. I say that because this is a 103-year history that is now gone. The Maryland Air National Guard started at Logan Field in Baltimore right after World War I in 1921, flying what are called Jennies. They were biplanes. Eventually moving to Martin State, flying P-51 Mustangs, F-86 Sabres, C-130Js, and now the A-10s. There's actually two units, the 104th Fighter Squadron and the 135th Airlift, which actually that did retire a couple years ago. But I just want to say it's sad to see this. You know, the silver lining is we are getting a continuing mission through cyber, so the men and women, you know, those number of jobs will continue, but it's the flying mission that's gone. We're going to be one of the only states now that does not have a flying mission with its Air National Guard unit. I want to thank you, Mr. President. I know you reached out to our congressional delegation. I reached out. Ironically, you know, we talked about the resolution we passed here a couple minutes ago, and does it have effect? We talked about doing one, but in fact, we decided to write a letter directly to the Pentagon, to our congressional leaders, you know, Senators Van Hollen and Cardin, Congressman Rupersberger and Harris have been very active, working with Congress, the Pentagon, Secretary of the Air Force, fighting to keep a flying mission, but unfortunately we lost it. But it's not over. You never know. Things change. So hopefully we get one, you know, with future leadership in the Pentagon. They might see that, hey, Maryland, incredible as they are, we'll bring it back. So I just want to say, Mr. President, thank you. And unfortunately, 103-year history is about to end. And ironically, the men and women of the 104th are actually taking the A-10s to the Middle East in April. So they're going back to do the mission, but when they come home, their mission will be over. So thank you, Mr. President.
No, thank you, Senator, for that reflection. It's a very, very frustrating situation. And senators will remember we had the mechanics who won the award for the best mechanic and maintained staff in the country, and it's a bummer. It's worse than that, actually. It's pretty rough. So the good news, yeah, as the senator mentioned, this was in the Air Force recommendation. We'll see in the president's budget when it comes out whether or not that's incorporated and whether the funding changes are in there. But keep fighting until it's over, but not promising yesterday. All right. Any other issues for the good of the order? Anything else? All right. If not, let's do a quorum call.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. We do have one more important piece of business that I almost forgot. We had a wonderful birthday yesterday. We have another one today. Our Sergeant at Arms, the Sergeant James Herod. Happy birthday. He thought he was going to get away without it.
Mr. President?
Yes, somewhere. Yes.
You reminded me, and in addition, we have another birthday also, but our president, permission to use the name
yes,
of the
Senator may proceed.
On Sunday, we're doing a little bit early, but our president pro tem will be celebrating his birthday, so let's all give Senator Augenstein a big round of applause. Absolutely.
He will not be where he always wanted to be on his birthday, you know, but well, it's okay. We'll celebrate in spirit. All right, let's recognize the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Monday, March 11th at 8 p.m.
8 p.m. Without objection, so ordered. Have a wonderful day and a great, safe weekend.